I can't sing. I can't spin on my head. I can't write poetry. So I thought I'd do a talk. And my talk is going to be about the future of technology. And it's basically based around the question of what happens when. So a lot of the things I'm going to talk about, although they're more factual than emotional, they do link to a lot of the talks that we had already today. So, and you notice some of the links as we go along. So, okay, next slide. So in terms of technology, right, I think in order for us to look at technology, we need to look at the history of people as well. The two are intertwined in this marriage of dependency that neither side benefits in leaving. And so, looking at ourselves, this black line represents the amount of time that we have been on this earth. So that's between 200 and 150,000 years, us particularly, our type of human being. And this red line here, which I'm not sure if you can see very well, is how old science is relative to that. Now, science is 500 years old, right, give or take. But technology is even younger than that. And when you think that the internet is only 20 years old, we have literally like not even scratched the surface of what we're going to do with technology in the coming decades, in the coming centuries. And so this is just to give you some perspective on that. Okay, if we can move to the next slide. Right. So this isn't a PowerPoint about evolution, but basically this is an example. Although this is quite well published, it's not very well known that we are not the only human beings that have ever existed. And this isn't a monkey, this is a human being. And we've actually only been alone on the planet for 13,000 years, which sounds like a lot, but we only became farmers like 10,000 years ago. So that puts it into perspective, right? And the reason why I show this picture is because, you know, that raises the question, why are we still here and these guys aren't? You know, what was different? Their brains were the same size as ours. Physically, they had the same strength as us. But the reason why we're here and they're not is because we, at some point, so we originated in Africa. And when we first tried to leave Africa and we tried to come up north into Europe, we basically just got bodied, shut down, slumped, had to go back. We got beaten by everyone, yeah? But then the second time we left, there was something different about us. There was something different about the way that we thought. And this method of thinking enabled us to expand at a rate that these guys could not compete with. What we could do is we could imagine something that wasn't and unite a greater number of people than any other species had the mental capacity to work in. So for example, whereas these guys might have been able to only communicate in groups of 250. So although you might have 1,000 Facebook friends, I guarantee you only know about 100 of them properly. So these guys only operated in that 100. We could operate in that 1,000. So when we went to wars and everything else, we won. And that was literally the only reason for it. So one thing I want to say though, when this thought process of ours changed, before that we didn't have art. We didn't have sophisticated language. We didn't have any of the things that we now value such as poetry. We didn't have poetry. We didn't have painting. We didn't have text. We didn't have ideas. We just had survival, and that's all that these guys had. But when we developed that, we won. Next slide, please. So to talk a bit about people, from like a basic kind of standpoint, the things that we as necessities need to survive, so oxygen, food, shelter, community, because that's the reason we want, security within that community, and then for a bit more of a modern flip, power. So by power I mean electricity. If we can move on to the next slide, please. Right. So everybody speaks the language of emojis, yeah? So I thought I'd just use these to explain this real quick. So currently, in order for us to have those necessities, right, we need that shelter first of all. So in order to pay for this house, you go to work. You then come back from work, and then your day-to-day costs, such as food and the power that runs this house, are also paid under that same income. The government regulates all this and makes sure everyone is imagining the same thing. So everyone is living under the same rules and following the same lines so that everyone can benefit. So that when you leave to go to work in the morning, you're not worried about someone just stabbing you in the throat, like, because you know people aren't rationally going to do something like that, right? So that keeps everything in order, and they build schools and hospitals and everything through the taxes that all of these communities, in a sense, pay. Next slide, please. Right. So the reason why I showed the previous slide is because I want to give you a macro picture of where we are now and the way that we live, because technology is not something that is an accessory to our lives. throughout the presentation, you're going to see that it's something that is actually actively changing our lives in ways that we probably aren't even ready for. But it's coming, so it's going to happen. This, right? Californian high-speed rail, right? To give you an example of why the government, the last link in that chain, is slowly starting to become irrelevant and less powerful as it has been traditionally. The California government needed to build a rail line between San Francisco and Los Angeles in order to decrease the commuting times for the people between the two cities. And so what they decided to do was build this high-speed train. And they made the announcement, if I'm not wrong, in 2009. And they said the project was going to cost $68 billion. And so, for example, they claimed that this was high-tech. This does about 220 miles an hour top speed, which is something that, for example, has been around in China and Japan and everything for like 30, 40 years. And so entrepreneurs and people like Elon Musk, who owns Tesla, if anyone has heard, they saw this and were like, what? Are you serious? Like, we're making something that is going to cost us like 10, 15 years to make and is already now 30 years behind what everyone else has done. Why are we spending $68 billion on this? So what he decided to do, he decided to just, for fun, design something that is better than this, in his opinion. But he didn't have the time to pursue that as a company or to pursue that as anything, so he gave it out for free. He said, look, this is the design, everybody take it, what you can make of it, make of it. And so now we move on to the next slide and I'll show you what that is. So you can't really see it properly, the presentation's been cut off, but this is what was then coined the Hyperloop. Now what this does, right, if you can see this tube here, if you've ever played air hockey and you hit the puck, if that's what it's called, and it moves along on basically a cushion of air, right? Now what this tube is, essentially, is a cushion of air, except it's not just on a flat surface, it's all the way around. So this train literally does not touch any of that and just flies through, no friction, 0% chance of any kind of collision or accident or anything. So, and also this doesn't do 220 miles an hour, this does like 750, which is almost double what your commercial flights do. So you'd get from LA to San Francisco in about half an hour. But the good thing, the most interesting thing about all of this is not even the tech. It's not even that this whole thing is powered by solar, so once you build it, you don't need to spend another penny. It's the fact that this entire project is being funded by people. Something called crowdfunding. So if you're not familiar with crowdfunding, it's basically the idea that you can come up with an idea, but you don't have the capital. Now, traditionally, if you weren't the man with the big bucks and the capital, you couldn't start the business. But today, if you have a good idea, you send the idea out on platforms such as Kickstarter, and then people, ordinary people, if I see this and I have to commute from LA to San Francisco, and the government wants to send $68 billion to build the other thing, and this, by the way, costs 10% of that, $6.8 billion. So it's like, why would you go with the other thing whereas instead of this? But the government still decided to go ahead with the original idea because it's tried and tested, it's safe, they know it's going to work, and this will take maybe a year or two extra research, so they didn't want to cost an extra year or two when it takes them 10 to make theirs. But so this entire thing is now being crowdfunded, right? At the same time that the government is building their train. So in essence, what's happened is somebody's idea that has been sent off onto the internet for free is now directly competing with the government and basically making them look like idiots. And so increasingly, crowdfunding is becoming more and more of a popular approach to business and shareholding and the sort. So if we no longer need, eventually, the government for financing big projects, they're only really left with regulating and keeping those rules in place. And so now, you know, we vote with votes, and in a lot of countries, like, votes are manipulated and whatnot. You know, here they aren't. But money talks. And in the future, it's not going to be about what people vote for, or if you can be bothered to get up and go to the polling stations and whatnot. You will vote with your money, like, directly, and that will be it. So if you want this as opposed to the next thing, and this costs you 10% of the next thing, you are gonna vote for this. Next slide, please. Okay, so before I explain what this is, in terms of energy, so all of these things take up energy, electricity basically. So if we need more and more electricity, right, we need more and more ways of getting it by doing less damage to the environment. Now, the leading way that we can get it renewably and looking at the foreseeable future is solar power. Now, every hour, enough solar power comes from the sun to the earth for the whole globe, everybody in the world, to have enough electricity for a year. every hour. Now, the only reason we can't get that yet is because we haven't developed solar panels good enough. So, but we're getting there. And they improve every year, just like the memory on your phone does, just like the camera on your phone does. So gradually, we're getting closer and closer to that point. Now, what this shows, so we know how much electricity we consume now. This graph is based on a projection of how much we're going to consume in 2030, which is 15 years from now, which is going to be a lot more. These yellow dots, if you can see them, are how many solar panels we need in terms of land area with today's current technology, which, as you can see, is basically nothing. So electricity will not be a problem. Next slide, please. See-through solar panels. Imagine skyscrapers built out of this stuff. So you build a skyscraper, this thing looks like glass, acts like glass, has the same properties as glass, but generates electricity. You power your whole building just by your building standing there. And in London, you know, we say, oh yeah, it's cloudy here all the time. Even when it's cloudy, sun rays get through, like about 80 to 90% of the rays get through, so it would still power. Like, it's a cloudy country, but it's still green. Next thing, please. Okay, now it starts to get, gradually it's going to get deeper and deeper real quick, like, so you've got to keep up. With this, right, Mercedes has been investing into a project called the Biome, and this has been going on for a number of years now. What the idea is why do we build a car, for example, in this case? Why do we build the wheel in China, and then we build the frame somewhere else, and then this somewhere else, and then everything gets built and then gets shipped together to be assembled? The idea behind this is that you can plant a seed, and the seed will grow into the car. Every single part of it. You don't need to build separate parts. An example of this is us. Your skin, for example, is a lot thinner on your face than it is on your back. But if you scratch your face, the same thickness grows back. The same thing with your back. You don't need to build a separate face and then the back and then put it together. The whole thing grows in one. And they've already started working on this, so they show that with time, this is very possible. Also included into this is nanotechnology, right? Which is basically just very, very, very small machines and robots, to put it simply. And what we can do with nanotechnology is the forecast for it. We can now, today, build a computer, as like today's definition of a computer, the size of basically, you could fit, right, 50 of these computers on a strand of human hair across, horizontally. That's how small these things are. But with the capacity of your desktop today. And so the idea behind this is, in the future, you would be able to have something on your table, maybe the size of that, maybe smaller, that could print out absolutely anything you need. And not even just in terms of 3D printing, but let's say you're shopping on ASOS, plug for ASOS, but let's say you're shopping on ASOS, you want to order something, you don't even want to wait for next day delivery, you want it now. You print it in your own home, you order it. And the beauty behind this is that people wouldn't need to deliver anything to you, so there are no emissions. Even though everything's electric, there are no emissions. What happens is, in the same way now that you download a song, all that is a piece of information. Ones and zeros, digital code. You can download a picture, a movie, all it is ones and zeros. Products in the future can be ones and zeros, and you will download the shirt that you're wearing, the scarf that you're wearing, your coat, in your home. That's it. Simple as that. Next slide, please. So everyone's seen this in memes. I will not be impressed with technology until I can download food. Bold statement, but next slide, please. 3D printed food. This is already a reality. These things are already made. Like and it's progressively, just as everything else technology related, it's progressing more and more exponentially every year. And so what these are, this is fully edible, and you could not make this shape if you were cooking. So the creativity that this equips chefs with, the abilities it equips mums with, you could be living at home and you're like, you know what? I finished uni in an hour, I'm going to get home in 2 hours. Let me just, through an app on my phone, tell my printer at home to print me a pizza for the time that I get there. And you can step into your door and it will go, bing, your pizza's ready, and that's it. That's it. You have to do absolutely nothing for that pizza to be there, and you have food. Now, this is all well and cool, like, oh yeah, pizza, Netflix, all of this. But imagine what this does for poorer countries. Imagine what this does for them. We see technology as like a bad thing, sometimes it's a good thing. I don't think we could label it as either. I think depending on how you use it, it makes it what you think that it is. And so, 3D printed food. Next slide, please. So we're just going to get real deep. So 3D printed organs and body parts. This is also happening now, by the way. This isn't like a forecasted thing, but in the foreseeable future, this will become more efficient, more effective, more everything. So the way medicine is headed for the future, right? You know, now, for example, let's say, you know, you want to take like a Nurofen or a paracetamol. The company makes the exact same pill 1 billion times over and sells the same pill to completely different people, but every single person has a different reaction to that particular pill. In the future, what will happen is you would know your DNA you'd basically give your doctor your DNA, and your doctor would give you a uniquely tailored pill for you that might even kill 99% of the population, but it does the job for you. Does the job for you. And you can print it in your home if you want. But yeah, these are things that we can make now. So right now, physically, you know, we've all seen like films where people have robotic hands and all that. That was like 5-10 years ago. This is now. If you lost your hand right now, maybe not right now, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we'd be able to print your exact same hand and you wouldn't even tell the difference. Next slide, please. Okay, so going back to the theme of nanotechnology, this is called a retrocyte. These purple balls here, and what this is a picture of the inside of your vein. So these are red blood cells, and these are the retrocytes. What these are basically, if you had like 5 centimeters cubed of these in terms of like space, that's 1/1000th of your entire blood in your body. If you had those, what these do basically, they are the exact same as blood cells, except it's a machine, it's nanotechnology. So in essence, it's a robot that is just there for a particular purpose, does a particular job. But if you had these in your system, you could breathe without breathing for 4 hours straight. Now, that sounds kind of cool, and that's with 5 centimeters cubed. You could have more. That sounds kind of cool, like, oh yeah, I could go diving and just chill. But think about what that does for somebody having a heart attack. Somebody just had a heart attack, and now their blood isn't circulating. It's not going to their brain. It's not going to their vital organs. Let's say there's traffic. They can't get themselves to the hospital. Their body is shutting down. This is the difference between them staying alive and them dying as a result of that. So not only would they not be panicked, they could chill for 2 hours and then have an Uber pick them up for like another hour, and then they get to the hospital and they still be chilling like, yeah, calm, nothing. But yeah, this is something that, this particular thing hasn't been made yet, but it's in the design process, and so it won't be long before this is actually a reality and you could actually get this. And by the way, the cost of this nanotechnology, right? Normally when a new thing comes out, like computers, like planes, like cars, everything costs a ridiculous amount. And then gradually, with more and more people buying it, it becomes cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. These, once you make them, like, they already know the price of it because they know how they're going to make it. They just haven't made it yet. These would be in the cost range of dollars per kilogram. I remember I said 5 centimeters squared. A kilogram is like a bigger amount. Dollars. Imagine that, what that does for the health of human beings. Next slide, please. This is a guy named Ray Kurzweil. Ray Kurzweil is a director at Google. This guy is 67 years old at the moment. He spends over $1,000 a day on vitamins, nutrients, supplements, because his aim is to live till 2045. The reason he wants to live till 2045 and is willing to spend so much money to get there is because his estimate in terms of where we are with medicine, where we've been, and the rate at which we're growing and developing things, he, along with many other medical scholars, believes that by around that time, human beings will be amortal. What that means is, in terms of disease and aging, because aging is a disease as well, you would not die. That would not kill you. But if you get hit by a car, or fall off a cliff, you know, like, that's your own doing, that was an accident. But health-wise, you will not die. And that's within the lifetime of everyone in this room. So let that marinate, like, think about that. Like, you are within reach of being amortal. Next slide, please. Eric Drexler, he is basically the main pioneer behind nanotechnology. He coined the phrase and he's been working on this stuff ever since. And he says very similar things. So the tabletop factory, you know, that's good for a factory, but the things you could build with these factories, like imagine tiny robots. Like I said, you could fit 50 to 70 of these across the strand of a human hair. Imagine the things you could build in terms of printout speed. So imagine just like a wall of those balls. And you put one material through, it could be any kind of material, you could put carbon through and a diamond will come out the other end, because each one of those balls does a particular role, and on the molecular level changes wherever it is that you put into it. So we could even be at a point where you could put in a speaker, and you could even maybe get something organic that comes out the other end eventually. You could print yourself a goldfish, you know. these things are weird and disturbing and everything, but this is actually something that we are close to doing. And like I said, immortality by 2045. So, you know, next slide, please. This is Giuliano Pinto. About 7 years ago now, he was involved in a car accident where, as a result of it, he became paralyzed from the chest down. And that was about 7 years ago. At the Brazilian FIFA World Cup, he opened up the entire ceremony by kicking a ball using only his thoughts. He's still paralyzed, by the way. He kicked the ball using only his thoughts. But he was able to do this by the work of this man, Miguel Nicolelli. What him and his team did over, I think it was something like 15 to 20 years of research, they built something called a brain-machine interface. Now, what this is, right, every time you have a particular thought, so if you're thinking about maybe moving your right arm up, your brain lets off a particular pulse. It has like a brainstorm for that moment. Every thought has a signature, if you like, in terms of electricity in your brain, right? And so what they did is they mapped this out for a particular set of instructions and things. So they began to understand this language of electrical pulses in your brain, right? And so what they were able to build for Giuliano were braces that could understand his thoughts. So all he had to do was think about walking and he could walk because the machine could read his mind, right? And you know, that's crazy. That's crazy. Like, a paralyzed man can walk now. But what's worse than that is that they were like, wait, hold on. If the machine can understand the brain and it can receive that piece of information, then it can send some back. So when Giuliano kicked the ball at the FIFA World Cup, the first thing he said after it, while he was like crying out joy and everything else, he said, I felt the ball, I felt the ball. We've come to a point, and this is like 2-3 years ago, where a paralyzed man can walk and feel it at his own will. This leads us on to somewhat of a finale. Now, okay, so I basically want to ask you, when you see this, what's your first thought? What do you think this is? Like anyone shout it out. Like, space? Brain? Internet? Yes. It's interesting that we see this as the universe, as galaxies. This is what the internet looks like to a computer. So an individual computer, metaphorically looking up, sees this. An individual human being, not metaphorically, looking up through a telescope, sees a very, very similar thing. And someone else said brain. I'm not sure who said brain, but you were right as well. The structure of a brain and the internet and the universe are ridiculously similar. And I can't say they are the same because the research into it is still ongoing, but it's getting to the point where we're seeing that the three are very, very in line. But what this leads us on to is, so I was talking about Giuliano and his thoughts and the machine, right? He can walk and feel it. The next step that we've been working on now is not to link the brain to a machine in order to walk and to do mechanical things, but we've linked the brain to a computer now. So, again, this isn't something that is completed, but we are halfway through it. You can link your brain to a computer, and let's say you're thinking about going on Netflix and watching episode 6 of Narcos, bam, it's there. Let's say you need to fill out a particular invoice for whatever, you think it and it's there. You don't need to type, you don't need a keyboard, you don't need a mouse, you need a screen. And if that. What this leads us on to is, if you can connect your mind to a computer, you can connect your mind to the internet. Now, if you think about that for a moment, think about your mind is connected to the internet, you don't need a mobile phone. You could be walking down the street on your way to uni, on your way to work, on your way to wherever, and you could be WhatsApping your cousins from back home whilst walking down the road. You could be walking down the road and you could wonder, oh, you know what, how is ginger beer actually made? And you know. You know. Because the thought in itself is, in essence, a Google search. What you are then, you then have access to the collective knowledge of mankind at any given moment on demand, and all you have to do is think it. You don't even have to ask, you know. Think about that, think about what that does to people as a whole, collectively. At that point, the argument is, are we even the same species? Are you the same species? You know, there's a famous quote that says, and this relates to a lot of the things that people have been talking about today, for people to put their differences aside, you would need an alien invasion. I give you that alien invasion. We are not the same species when you can think, be anywhere you want, knowing anything you want. If, for example, tomorrow they'll discover something completely new. And let's say I've been thinking about buying a particular jacket, but I'm not too sure about the price. Let's say AIDA then has a sale. I won't need to go onto their website. I won't need to see their marketing. I'll get a notification to my brain like, yo, that jacket is now on sale, the one you've been thinking about. But the one I haven't been thinking about is not relevant to me. I won't know about that unless I want to know about that. So collectively as human beings, if every single individual in the world, think about what that does to education. Do you need to go to school? You don't need to go to school. You know everything Einstein knew just because you're connected to it. No. You have Wikipedia in your mind, you have absolutely everything. So then the only reason to come together in an educational institution is to come up with new ideas, the next thing. And what we've been doing with technology up till now, like when, if you give any human being a new power, a child a new power, the first thing they do is use it for the immediate benefits that they get. So if you say to your kids, yo, today you can have anything you want, the first thing they're going to ask for is sweets, chocolate. If you say to an adult, you can have anything what you want, they might say money, they might say whatever, and they can have access to all of these things. And so for that short period of red time on that black line that we've had technology, we've only been fulfilling our immediate demand. What happens when you have access to absolutely everything and no demand has not been fulfilled for you? What do you then do from that point? All the ideas that you then come up with are not for you, but it's for something else. And if by 2030, by NASA's predictions, we're on Mars, and we're living on multiple planets, then what you're thinking, the problems you're going to be solving from then are not, yo, what shoes shall I get? I'm not sure about, is it a New Balance, is it charge? You're going to be thinking about, yo, basically that star is about to die. In that solar system, there are this many thousand species. Should we just save it? Should we just save it? Are we the same species? What happens when all of this stuff comes to be? Next slide, please. My name is Lorik. This is Open Conversations at AIDA Shoreditch. Thank you very much. I don't know about you though, but yeah, I'm mind blown. We are coming towards the end of the line. I know everyone's a little bit tired and stuff, but please, pay as much attention as you can. We do have 2 more acts